Children can teach you a lot of interesting things, especially how to handle disagreements. Now, my family has custody of my 4-year-old cousins, and they are twins, one boy and one girl. And Allie and Noah have taught us that when you are in an argument with your siblings, it is best to just discontinue the argument, because otherwise this could lead to toys being tossed across the playroom in a sort of toddler World War III. Now, Allie and Noah have interesting tactics for resolving their arguments, which are usually over who gets to play with the Play-Doh or the Etch-a-Sketch first. And one of the ways they resolve these is by turning their backs to each other and saying, "I'm not talking to you." But then when they need to talk to each other, they say, "Not Allie says, where's my bunny?" Because Allie really likes this stuffed bunny that ended up on Noah's side of the room. And then Noah will say, "Oh, not Noah sees your bunny right there." It's not Allie and Noah talking to each other. It's not Allie and not Noah talking to each other, if that makes any sense at all. Allie and Noah made sure that they had a middle force to help mitigate the conflict between them, even though they're not Lincoln Douglas debaters. And the idea of having someone in the middle of two opposing sides is what we're going to be addressing as we define and defend the significance of Jesus as the mediator. Now, in this speech, we're going to be dividing this question into 3 parts. First, just as the question asked, we will be defining what a mediator is. Then we'll be discussing in the second part who Jesus is acting as the mediator for. And then finally, what sort of significance there is in this terminology being applied to Jesus Christ. Now let's jump right into the first point, which is the definition of Jesus as the mediator. Now, a mediator is, very simply put, someone that comes between opposing sides and speaks for them. They're kind of like a representative. So what it means when we call Jesus the mediator is that he is representing one side in a battle between 2 opposing forces. So the question then is, who is Jesus mediating for? Who does he represent in this metaphorical battle, or a spiritual battle, I should say? And very simply put, Jesus is the mediator for the entire human race. He acts as our bridge from humanity all the way to God the Father. And this idea is backed up in the scriptures when it discusses humanity being incapable of meeting God's standards of perfection, which means we can't act as our own mediator. We can't be our own bridge from our race all the way up to God the Father. And this idea is discussed several times, particularly in Ephesians 2, 8 through 9, when it states, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." The human race can't really approach God on their own terms, or at least they couldn't. There used to be a very complex set of standards they had to meet through the tabernacle and the priest system, and they acted as our mediator. But then Jesus decided to step in and fulfill that role, and he now acts as our mediator, and now gives us the right to approach God. John Piper states, "Because God is just, he will always treat you fairly. However, as the holy and righteous sovereign of the universe, God cannot ignore any act of sin, which means the entire human race was condemned to be unable to approach God on their own terms, which is why the priests had to be put in place. They acted as the mediator for the human race, but then God, in his all-loving mercy, sent his son Jesus, who now plays that role for humanity." So Jesus acts as the mediator for the human race, because we were unable to establish that role for ourselves. Before, it had to be the priests. But now that Jesus came down and paid the price for our sins, we are able to approach God. And we are able to pray to him without going through a set of standards, or without trying to make it through a tabernacle system. Romans 7:18 discusses the idea of knowing that there is nothing good in our flesh. But thankfully, numerous times in the scriptures, we see that we have been saved through Jesus' mediation, especially in Ephesians 1:7, when it states, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in according with the riches of God's grace." What then is the significance of recognizing Jesus as the role of the mediator? Well, it's pretty obvious. because Jesus was willing to step in and take this role away from the priests and away from those in the tabernacles, it means we can now pray to God whenever we want to. We don't have to worry about him hearing us just because a priest didn't ordain what we're doing. But secondly, it means that those who are Gentiles, those who were not Jewish and would technically not be able to allow temples or tabernacles, can also approach Jesus, because he not only fulfills the role of mediator for the Jewish people, but for all people, unconditionally, the entire human race. So this is significant both for the Jewish people, who are God's promised people, and for everyone who has ever existed and ever will exist. James 5:11 states, "The Lord is full of compassion and mercy," and this is clearly displayed through who Jesus is today. Ali and Noah have established interesting mediators for their own fights. But thankfully, we don't have to count on 4-year-olds playing that role for us, because Jesus was more than willing to step in and play our mediator